Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and over the last couple weeks I've done a video on NuxtJS, I've done a video on SvelteKit. So really, like, the third framework that's kind of in this category is Nux. So I thought I'd give Nux a spin. I didn't like pre-spin it before this video, so I'm gonna kind of figure it out as you do this video. So you'll be learning with me. I can't imagine it. I've dabbled in Nux in the past, so if I remember right, it's going to be pretty similar to Nux. But yeah, let's try it out. So, blah, blah, blah. I just want to get to, let's use the NPX version. Okay, create Nux app, project name. So let's do that. So here, let me just close this window over here. Don't need that open right now. Okay, so let's see here. NPX, create Nux app. And let's create an app called example. Okay, that'll generate that. Let me just close this window over here. Cool. Project name, example, doesn't really matter. Do use JavaScript. I'd rather use NPM. What's this? Okay, this was CSS stuff. I'd rather not use anything pre-built in CSS. Move up and down to reveal more choices. So I'll assume that's how I choose, whichever one's on top. Let me lift this. This is something that indicates what I'm actually selecting here. Okay. So this just kind of goes on forever and ever and ever. Bootstrap view framework. Yeah, I'd rather do none. Very confusing. I want none, so there we go. And do I want any of this? Axios, promise-based HTTP client, Git-based headless CMS. I'm good. So let's just hit enter. ESLint, do I want any of that? No. No. Single page app. Let's use universal, because that's what I kind of want to try out. Deployment target. Okay, let's just play with static. Development tool. Okay, well, what is your GitHub username? Alex Merced Coder. Git. Okay. That's a lot of questions. That could be a little bit more straightforward. Okay, so let's go over here and take a look. Go routing. Routing should pretty much work the same way. But let's see here. Yeah, so basically it's going to be Nux link instead of link. But it should be file based. Next view, put your pages. Yeah, so let's try that out. So let's cd into that folder, cd into example, and do an npm to build for npm run dev to run the dev server. Okay, so we got a dev server running on localhost 3000. It's building the client and the server. Cool. And it should be here in pages. Okay, let's take a look at the index page, how that's kind of structured. Should look like a standard view component. Yep. It's the standard view component. Cool. So that means I should be able to create a new file. We'll call it cheese.view. And then here I will just put, you know, template. View. There we go. and just say h1 cheese. Okay, so there's my template, here's my script tag, and here's any styling. And now I should be able to go to localhost 3000, because again we're using file-based routing. So that means whatever the name of the file is the route. So localhost 3000/cheese. Yep, that works. Good. So this is pretty much just like next. Cool. Directory structure. Pages directory, components directory. Okay, so they do have a separate components directory for individual components. Right there. Okay, so again, that's different than like the way Next and SvelteKit have gone, where basically you can use like a underscore before the file names to say, hey, this is not a page. Okay. Concepts. How about params? Server-side rendering. Let's see how they handle server-side rendering. Export default function. Recres. Okay, so let's see here. Server-side rendering. The ability to have application JavaScript required to render your web page. Extend and control your server. You can extend the server with server middleware and control routes with middleware. So in this case, I could console.log rec.url. So server middleware. You can extend the server middleware. So let's see here. Was there a folder for that? Server. I chose a static generator, so I don't know if that would have added different server versus browser environments. Because you are in a Node.js, you have access to Node.js objects. Before mount, server-side rendering steps in Nux, browser the server the browser, caveats, yada yada yada. All that's so far. This seems like a little bit more complicated than Next. Like Next and SvelteKit kind of got it down where it's like pretty straightforward. But I mean, just generating a basic view page there is pretty straightforward. Works just like I would expect it to. Now let's just double check. Do params work the same way? I'm assuming they do. But the question is, how would I access the param? Context, server-side routing, context, and helpers. I'm assuming this is going to be how we access params. Yep, there it is. So function, context, all. Where are we exporting this function? All context keys that are present by default. Okay, well, let's see here. Export default. Async data, is that how we have to do that? Function, all context keys. Context. NuxtJS helper, connection checker. Okay, so let's try that out. Let's create a folder. New folder. We'll call it cheese. And then we'll have a new file in there called queso.view. Okay, so then I'll just do the view boilerplate. So template. Yeah, that works for me. Okay. So the way that will look like earlier, in the exported object, we're gonna have an async data function. Okay, and then async data context. Let's see, context at params that ID. What does it return? Post. Cool. So let's see here. Let's try that out. Async function. Async data. Context. So just writing a method in this object. Something it doesn't like about that syntax. Async. Oh, I see. Maybe I don't need to use the function keyword because it's inside of an object. Because I just woke up. Okay, so there we go. And so basically, I'll just keep it simple. I'll return And then we're just going to say ID or queso equals context.params.queso. Okay, and then let's try to interpolate that. H1. And let's see if I can do that. Queso. Okay, because I'm assuming the way this works is that this basically, if you've ever used Vue before, essentially what happens is you write this function that returns an object, and that object is your data, aka your state. And so I'm assuming this async data function does essentially the same thing, except it's asynchronous. So in that case, this object will be returned, and queso will be a property I can access from it. So let's see if that works. So this would be /cheese/Munster. I did not like that. Compile server. Okay, so maybe params don't work that way. So let's take a look at how do params work. And so far the documentation isn't as clear as I'd like it to be. Params. File system look, here we go. Params. But where, how do we call the file name? Index.view. File system routing. Yep. What am I going to generate? Oh, so it's an underscore. Got it. So this needs to be rename underscore queso. Okay, so now if I go with that, now this should. Why is it giving me cheese? Okay, so it's not airing anymore, so let's go back to the main page. And let's go back to /cheese/Munster. I get cheese. Interesting. Let me change the folder name. Rename food. Okay, and let's try that. Food/Munster. Okay, that works. Okay. Because again, the food folder, so that's part of the URL, and then this was the param, and the param just got passed into the async data. So that actually wasn't so hard. Like, that's pretty straightforward. Like, okay, just pass that in through there, and I have access it from there. That's actually, that I like better than the way you get the params in a lot of other places. Okay, but I see they're using the underscore for params, so that's interesting. Now the question is, what if I want to write like server-side routes? How would I do that? So let's see here. Features, deployment targets, data fetching, loading, access components, transact, all fine and good. Configuration glossary, internals glossary, components glossary, server side. What if I wanted to build an API? Let's do that. API, the plugins property servers, custom API endpoints. Here we go. So how would this work in Nuxt? Well, this allows the creation of REST endpoints. So blah blah blah, app.use, app.all, module.exports equals app. Wait, do I have to do that myself? Nuxt config server middleware. Don't confuse it with routes middleware, which are all called before each route by Vue and client side. Middleware listed in the server middleware property runs server side. Middleware runs server side before the Vue server render and can be used for server specific tasks like handling API requests or serving assets. Okay, custom server middleware. For more information, see connect docs. Okay, so this is That's not super clear. So that will be something I have to play with later. But I mean, the basics are pretty there and they're pretty straightforward. Yeah. I mean, otherwise it generally does the same thing. It does do it slightly different. I think like Next used to be more like this once upon a time. Like Next, I know has changed the way it does things quite a bit, and SvelteKit has kind of copied a lot of the newer ways that NuxtJS does things, and I do like that new way. But this works fine. This works fine. And again, if you primarily used Vue, I would be plenty happy with this. I would just have to explore this a little bit deeper. Vue isn't, I would say, decent in Vue, but it hasn't really been my daily driver over the last year. So okay, that's Nux. Again, if you wanted like a Next.js type experience in Vue, this is the choice. If you wanted like a Gatsby-like experience, then it would be Gridsome. But yeah, there we go. We looked through the documentation. You kind of saw just a couple of the basics of how that would work, but not so bad. My name is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. Have a great day and enjoy. Make sure you head over to devnurture.com and join the Slack and Discord community.